On the 663rd day of the war in Ukraine, the fighting was concentrated in these areas. In Donetsk front, heavy battles are taking place in the Avdiivka sector as well as south of the town of Marinka. During the last 2 weeks, the Russian forces increased the intensity of their attacks along the eastern front and were able to make significant advances south of Marinka. After securing control over most of the remaining areas on the western edge of this town, the Russian forces are now working to clear the outskirts from any Ukrainian presence, and at the same time they are trying to develop a powerful pincer move over Novomikhailivka. The Russian army is currently attacking the Ukrainian defenses on two sides. Bypassing the stronghold of Pobieda, which is currently held by the Ukrainians, Russian forces continued to push south and captured a series of fortifications about 4 kilometers north of Novomikhailivka. Although the battles are still ongoing and the recent deployment of the 46th Airmobile Brigade of the Ukrainian army has helped to slow down the Russian advance, it seems that the Russian forces are determined to continue pushing into the areas north and northeast of Novomikhailivka in order to seize the strategic heights and fortifications that are located just a few kilometers away from the settlement. The situation appears to be more difficult on the southern part of the front, as after a series of armored assaults, the Russians were able to capture more ground south and southeast of Novomikhailivka, reportedly reaching the southern outskirts of the town, where fighting is currently taking place. Geolocated footage published on Russian Telegram channels shows that the Russian army continues to conduct heavy artillery shelling over the eastern side of the village, possibly in preparation of other waves of armored assaults over the Ukrainian positions. In Avdiivka sector, heavy battles continue despite the harsh weather conditions. During the last week, Russian forces made small but costly advances on the northern part of the sector, while some recent gains were made on the southern part. On the northern flank, geolocated footage published by Ukrainian sources proves that Russians made numerous attempts to push west and break the Ukrainian lines between Stepove and the chemical plant, but all attempts failed and ended up with Russians sustaining heavy losses in manpower and equipment. The Russian command did not stop the waves of infantry assaults in this direction in attempts to gain a solid foothold inside Stepove and the nearby defensive positions south of the village. However, mechanized units of Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade remained highly active in this area and frequently launched quick counterattacks using their Bradley infantry fighting vehicles to inflict damage to the Russian infantry forces, not allowing them to build up a significant force for more powerful attacks towards the Ukrainian positions. The heavy fire of the Ukrainian Bradleys on the ground, combined with the work of artillery and drone units, has significantly weakened the Russian foothold north of the chemical plant, with some of the Russian units who currently operate in this area reporting that they lost up to 80% of their original force within just a few days. Understanding that with such a high number of casualties, it is nearly impossible to advance head-on towards the Ukrainian lines, and also being unable to entrench a large force inside the small village of Stepove, which is now reduced to ruins, it seems that the Russian command is throwing more and more resources into probing the Ukrainian defenses north of Stepove, hoping to bypass the Ukrainian resistance north of the chemical plant and head towards the key village of Berdichi instead. After a series of attacks, Russians were able to solidify their control over some positions along the railway about 2 kilometers away from their objective, but after a few days of no reported advances, it seems that so far the Ukrainian defenses have successfully stopped the Russian offensive. On the southern part of the sector, during the last week the Russian advances were limited to the industrial zone and the nearby surrounding areas. After over a month of fierce clashes, Russians were able to fully capture the industrial zone and continued to push northwest, probing the Ukrainian defenses and reportedly entering the first buildings of the residential areas on the southeastern edge of Avdiivka. Yesterday, the Ukrainian source Deep State reported that after a long time of no visible territorial changes, Russians were able to make some small advances near Pervomayske, Opitne and south of Sieverne, but it remains to be seen if they will be able to continue their slow progress or not. Friends, if you like my daily updates, I kindly ask you to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as this will greatly help the channel to reach a wider audience. That's all for today's update. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, and have a great day.